Hello everybody. Thank you for joining me for this special live object talk for Refugee Week. My name is Emma and I'm an engagement officer at the Jewish Museum. And today you are joining me for an object talk on the school report of Grete Glauber, a child refugee of Nazi persecution. Now, these two school reports are just two of the 40,000 objects in the Jewish Museum London's designated collection. And our collection shows the diversity of Jewish life and history, and our programmes exist to explore connections between faith and cultures. I am now going to share my screen with you all so you can see an image of these two school reports from our collection side by side. These are both school reports for Grete Glauber, who was born in Vienna on the 6th of May 1930. She was a child refugee who came to Britain on the Kindertransport, and like 2/3 of the children who came on the Kindertransport, she was not reunited with a parent after the war. In 1933, Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power in Germany and immediately started making laws discriminating against Jewish people. From March 1938, when Austria was annexed with Nazi Germany in what is known as the Anschluss, Austrian Jewish people faced the same discriminatory laws as the German Jewish community. Anti-Semitism was very high, and Jewish people were subject to terrible violence, abuse, and humiliation in the streets. On the 9th of November 1938, the Nazis organised a violent attack against Jewish people. This pogrom has become known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. This marked a turning point, and many Jewish people were even more desperate to try to leave Austria and Germany. However, other countries were hesitant to allow Jewish refugees into their countries. It would be wrong to ignore the level of anti-Semitism in this country at that time, or indeed the reluctance amongst the British public to accept refugees at the expense of the taxpayer. The Night of Broken Glass, however, was seen as so shocking that campaign groups were able to convince the British government to allow child refugees from Austria and Germany to enter the country. This rescue mission has become known as the Kindertransport. Once the British government had made this decision, it acted very quickly. There were actually only 3 weeks between the Night of Broken Glass and the first train of child refugees leaving. So the policy was implemented, all the paperwork completed, all the logistics arranged in just 3 weeks. This demonstrates just how urgent this mission was, and also how quickly the government could respond and act when it chose to do so. Between December 1938 and September 1939, when war broke out, around 10,000 Jewish refugee children were admitted to Britain, and Grete Glauber was just one of these 10,000 children. In our collection, we have these two school reports for her. You'll be able to see that the one on our left-hand side is written in German. This is a school report from just before she came to Britain on the Kindertransport. The one on the right is in English and is for after she arrived in this country. And I'm going to begin by looking at the later report, at the English school report for her. Grete received this school report from Enfield County School for Girls in the Christmas term of 1941. She is recorded as being 11 years old and 4 months. Along the left-hand side of this report, we can see a long list of subjects that she studied here. We have scripture, English literature, history, geography, French, arithmetic, algebra, geometry, biology, music, and many more subjects. Next to each subject, there is space for the teacher to give a mark out of 4. 1 is very good, 2 is good, 3 is satisfactory, and 4 is below standard. and teachers also have a space to write a comment. Now, Grete is only above satisfactory on 2 subjects, history and geography. She gets a 2 for each of them, which is good. Her teacher's comments are that Grete's work is good on the whole, that she answers well in class, but is rather careless. She doesn't have any 1s, any very goods on her school report. Everything else is either a 3 or a 4, satisfactory or below standard. The teacher's comments are not particularly positive about her work. Comments on the report include: Grete is inclined to hurry through her work and needs to be more careful and exact. Grete needs to take more interest. To show you a close-up view, the general report by the form mistress at the end has ability, but is often too lazy to use it. If she would make the effort, she could do better. Now, on first reading this school report nearly 80 years later, I found it made me a little bit annoyed. I felt it was very harsh and seemed to lack an understanding of the emotional strain that Grete was surely going through at this time, it being wartime and being separated from her family. So what was it exactly that Grete was going through outside of school at the time of this report? What was making her seem lazy or uninterested or careless? We have a number of photographs, letters and documents all relating to Grete Glauber in our collection, and they help us to try to piece together this story, and I'd like to share some of this collection with you now. Grete was born in Vienna on the 6th of May 1930 to Selma Glauber, who was always referred to by the nickname Elsa. We get a sense of the affection between mother and daughter in this beautiful photograph we have of the 2 of them together. Grete's biological father was not married to her mother, and her mother Elsa was very determined that he would not have any contact with her daughter. Instead of a biological father, Grete had the support of a man she referred to as Uncle Willy, or Wilhelm Knapp. This seems to be Elsa's boyfriend rather than a biological uncle. And on the Austrian school report, Wilhelm has even signed it as her father, showing he was taking on this role for her. Let's have a look at this Austrian school report here. This is dated the 11th of February 1939, and Wilhelm's signature is on it. I'm just going to zoom in slightly so you can see over on the right-hand side. He signed it in the box where the parent would sign. It's interesting to compare this school report to the later English report. There's quite a difference. Whilst in England, she was receiving 3s and 4s. In Vienna, we can see she is getting 1s and 2s. Her best subjects include local studies, German language, German reading, and German writing, subjects she does not study in England. In fact, the majority of subjects she studies in England are actually new to her. Geography, history, science, all new to her, and all of this she had to learn in a language we can see she was not studying beforehand. There is a note on the report saying that she will be leaving the school to go to London on the 25th of April 1939. Grete left all her family to come to England on the Kindertransport. She was just 8 years old. She went to live with Olive Rudkin, a Quaker schoolteacher who knew Elsa from before the war. Olive had written to offer to take Grete in if she came over on the Kindertransport, and Elsa wrote to thank her for this offer on the 22nd of January 1939. We have in our collection this letter dated to the 22nd of August 1939 after Grete had come to England. And in it, Elsa writes to Olive, "Thank you very much for all the nice and good things my child is experiencing with you." It is written in German, showing that Olive spoke German, making it easier for Grete that she was going to stay with someone who spoke her own language. Elsa was trying to get a visa herself to join them, and she writes in this letter that she hopes to come to England in 2 weeks and looks forward to seeing them then. Whilst Elsa was in an increasingly dangerous situation, in this letter she maintains a positive and hopeful tone. Is she perhaps trying to reassure her daughter and protect her from the reality of what she was experiencing, even when they were apart? Now, despite this positive, this hopeful tone of the letter, we have another one, sadly not digitized, that was sent on the 11th of September 1939 to Olive from Elsa. She informs her that whilst her visa has now arrived, it is too late for her to get the last train to England. The outbreak of war at the start of September 1939 prevented many Jewish refugees from coming here. In this same letter, Elsa also shares her concern that she has not heard from Grete and begs Olive to get her to write. By now, they have been separated for over 4 months. The lack of the letter may be because Grete was not actually with Olive at this time, which Elsa does not seem to know. Instead, she's been evacuated to Dartmouth in Devon. We have a letter that Grete wrote to Olive whilst they were separated on the 24th of September 1939. She addresses Olive as Auntie O and writes that you have wanted me badly is sad, seems to be leaf, sad leaf. I hope you will have me soon. And her spelling shows that she seems to still be learning English, although perhaps she did have some English before she arrived. She later writes, it is a good thing that your church behaved very well. The Quakers were very active in campaigning for and setting up the kinder transport, and this is perhaps what Grete is referring to. To show you over on page 2, she writes, I will write to Mammy on Monday and Uncle on Tuesday. So perhaps Olive has let her know that Elsa is concerned that she has not heard from her. She also gives some information on her schooling. On the earlier page, she writes, I have school began on the 21st. Bells are all very nice, but I miss you very much. For me, this sentence shows some of the emotional strain of being separated from both her family and Auntie O. She also shows emotional maturity in that the letter seems to be reassuring her aunt that the people are very kind to me, not wanting to cause any undue worry. However, my favourite sentence of this letter comes on the final page, on page 3. And my favourite sentence reads, I am much slimmer from jumping. It reminds me of just how young Grete was when she was going through this difficult situation, despite how her emotional maturity makes her seem much older than she was. She was just a child when she was experiencing these things. Grete seems to have returned to Olive at some point in 1940. At the start of 1940, letters from Elsa reached them once a month, alternating each month whether they were sent to Grete or Olive. Perhaps she could only send one a month. In the February letter, Elsa writes that she is pleased to hear that Grete is enjoying school so much. Whilst Grete's latest school report doubts her commitment, describing her as lazy, the teachers are either mistaken, or perhaps Grete is trying to reassure her mother that she is doing well even whilst they are apart. Perhaps a bit of both. A big concern in these letters was that Grete's biological father was in England and wanted to see Grete and get guardianship of her. Elsa pleads to Olive not to let him see her daughter or get guardianship. Even though she is apart and cannot join her daughter and be with her, she is still working very hard to try and protect her. In December 1940, Olive was informed that there were now real difficulties getting letters back and forwards between Grete and her mother. The closest communication we have to the date of the English school report is sent to Olive Rudkin from the German Emergency Committee through the Society of Friends. It includes a message from Wilhelm Knapp, and I'm going to show that to you close up here. In this, he claims that Grete is his daughter and Elsa is his wife, which we know is not correct, but may be designed to try to improve communication between them and may simply reflect how they viewed each other. He writes that he had thought his daughter was in Lisbon and is glad she is still in London. He says he gets no direct news from his wife. She has not the possibility to correspond with him or with her daughter because she has been sent as a worker to some part of Germany where it is not allowed. He goes on to tell her that his relatives tell him that it is well, and he asks that this information be passed on to Grete Glauber. This is dated the 28th of October 1941, less than 2 months before the school report we looked at the beginning. I cannot imagine how difficult this news must have been for Grete to process. We now know, as Grete did not at the time, that Elsa had been deported from Vienna on the 12th of March 1941 to Lager Opitau, a labour camp. Looking into the letters in our collection shows a very different girl to the one described in the 1941 school report. Instead of a girl who is lazy, slow, or lacking in interest, we see a girl who is trying to be much older than she is. Separated from her mother and not knowing if she is safe, she always writes positively, telling her that she is fine. I think she shows remarkable emotional maturity. I also have tremendous respect for Elsa, who, although going through terrible experiences, always seems to be trying to reassure her daughter and protect her, even when she is in another country. The last communication we have from Elsa to Grete was sent on the 27th of August 1942. She writes that she is happy that Grete is happy and has lots of food, but can't say the same for herself. She also says she hopes that they will see each other again. They were never reunited. We do not know exactly what happened to Elsa, but we do know that on the 20th of October 1942, inmates from her labour camp were taken to Treblinka, a death camp, where they would have been murdered on arrival. However, we do have a letter from Elsa dated the 12th of November 1942 that was sent to her mother, to Grete's grandmother. Now, it would have been extremely unlikely that she would have been able to send this if she had indeed been sent to Treblinka. So perhaps she had been deported somewhere else before that. We can only speculate. We simply do not know. All we can say with any certainty is that she was murdered during the Holocaust. Olive Rudkin adopted Grete after the war and took up Elsa's battle to prevent Grete's biological father from getting guardianship of her. I would like to finish by moving a little bit forward in time to another school report. This one dated January 1964. This is not a report for a pupil. It is instead a testimonial of a teacher, and it is written about the infant school teacher, Miss Rudkin. This is a testimonial of Grete, who has now followed in her guardian's footsteps, taken her surname, and become a school teacher. This testimonial praises Grete, describing her as always ready to help, that she settled in quickly and is willing to carry out any suggestions made by the county advisors. This is very different to the lazy, uninterested girl of the first school report we looked at, and it is wonderful to see that Grete went on to find a school that really appreciated her talents, this time as a teacher. I wanted to share these school reports belonging to Grete Glauber for this object talk for Refugee Week, as her story is still so relevant in a world where there are currently millions of child refugees, many of them separated from their families. Grete's story reminds us that each refugee is an individual with their own unique story and talents, and that we need to make an effort to learn and understand, or we risk viewing any emotional strain as being laziness or lack of interest. And finally, it reminds us that each child has the potential to go on to do something amazing, whether it is to be a highly praised teacher or something else. Thank you so much for joining me for this object talk, and thank you for choosing to celebrate Refugee Week with the Jewish Museum. Next week is Armed Forces Week. Do join us then for an object talk based on the collection of the Jewish Military Museum, which will be led by my colleague Shireen. We will see you there.